guys. So, welcome to Coffee with Shah, and we've got four important people with us today. It's none other than Jane Eyre, Mr. Rochester, Mrs. Reed, and of course, the author of the novel Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte itself. So, let's not waste our time, let's go and question them. Stay tuned and enjoy. So we'll start our questioning session with none other than Jane Eyre first. So Jane, can you tell me whether your character is a likable protagonist or not?
My character as Jane Eyre was definitely a likable protagonist, for I was not idealized, but my story was realistic based on true life events, which made my role very much felt and lived by the audiences. Jane Eyre's character touched by many souls.
Yes, of course, I can't deny that Jane Eyre's character definitely touched our souls. So, I have another question for you, Jane. And do you think your character, Jane Eyre, represents feminism?
Definitely, my character Jane Eyre was unique during the Victorian period. Jane Eyre represents the insurgent woman eager for esteem. She stands for a new lady who has the courage to fight for her own rights and true love. Analyzing the contemporary of social, historical and cultural background of Victorian period and key points of feminism and Jane's personal experiences, it clearly points out that I, or precisely Jane, gradually becomes feminist in pursuing independence, equality and true love. Thus, yes, Jane Eyre very much represents feminism.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jane. Yes, I have to agree that Jane definitely did show us her strength, her never giving up attitude in pursuing independence and equality and true love. Last but not least, Jane, I have one more question for you. In your view, what was the position of women during your era, the Victorian period, and now in the 21st century?
As a woman during the Victorian period, we were forced to adhere to the strict expectation created on us. Women were expected to take part in their husband's interests, business, and before marriage, we were meant to master the housewife skills unless we are born in wealthy family. Education was something that not allocated for those women from lower class families. Victorian age segregated women and their rights according to their class status. Unlike now, in the 21st century, every woman were given equal rights on every single thing as men. We are respected, listened and wanted in all matter. Voices are heard and reached out. We are able to achieve in various fields.
That was indeed a very insightful opinion, Jane. Thank you very much. Now, let's move on to our next artist in the novel, Mr. Rochester. Now, let's move to our second character from the novel, Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rochester, do you ever feel guilty for hiding your first wife and your marriage from the world? And of course, Jane Eyre.
Well, at the beginning, I would say no. I definitely didn't feel guilty at all hiding the truth from everyone. But since Jane's entry into my life, I kind of, changed things that I love, how I see them, and falling for Jane especially. It's really hard for me to keep the truth away from her, but her innocence, her strong nature, it really kind of made me stop. It put things to light for me, and ever since I fell for her, I pretty much feel guilty every single day.
Thank you for the very genuine answer, Mr. Rochester. I've got another question for you, Mr. Rochester. Do you believe Jane and you got the happy ending you both deserve?
Well, do I deserve the happy ending? I think yes. Um, well, in the midst of fighting, I lost my hand, and I lost my eyesight, and because of my ex-wife, burned the whole house down. And Jane, my dear Jane, she was, she left Thornfield. She's trying to look for a family. She's longed for that relation, and I'm glad that she found that in the reverse. But I think, some things just doesn't turn out the way things that we did it turn out. So the I think, however, the things made Jane realize that I am the only family she need, and I'm the only love that she ever cared about. And yeah, I think we found the happy ending for Mr. Rochester and Jane Eyre. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Rochester. Yes, and I do believe you both got your happy ending you both deserved. Before moving on to Mrs. Reed, let me ask you one question, Charlotte. Charlotte, what inspired the creation of Jane Eyre? Because I believe every novel or every writers do have an inspiration and a situation or even an event that makes them to write, to pour out. So what was the inspiration behind Jane Eyre? Would you mind sharing it with us?
Firstly, my experience to fight my own poor life by creating my very own talk about feminism. Next on hand was the boarding school, the miserable boarding school I had, and I learned a lot of lessons of the life to the fittest. Finally, the quest of Jane Eyre had throughout her life pursued for true love, independence, and equality, where feminism thoughts grows to mature. Jane Eyre was none other than a mirror to my life of Charlotte Bronte.
Jane Eyre is definitely a mirror of you, Charlotte. Thank you very much for being so open and also genuine with your answers. But I've got another question for you, if you don't mind. What are the prime lessons of Jane Eyre?
Okay, about the life lesson. Jane Eyre tells us whatever difficulties that we had, never quit. Jane also proved that in a man-dominated society, women should strive for decency and dignity. Self-esteem a primary element to protect. Feminism is an equipment to defend. No matter how helpless our condition is, survival is must, and we should never give up. When it's come to perfect match, love, equality, faith, and good fortune are required.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Charlotte. And now, let's move to Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Reed, do you agree with the cruelty your character possessed?
Of course not. My character was way out of hand. I not only treated a young child extremely bad by locking her in the one room that gave nightmares, but I also did snatch her only opportunity to feel the love of family, the love of feeling wanted amongst people of her own.
Mrs. Reed, what was Jane's fault towards you and your kids that made you hate her that much, if you don't mind?
Jealousy. As any woman out there, I was jealous of Jane.
Because my late husband loved her dearly more than his own. Jane was very intelligent for her age despite he never being educated, and she was a strong-willed girl and righteous. Whereas my kids, they were spoiled my wealth.
And here we are at the end of the show. I hope you guys enjoyed our interview with Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, Mrs. Reed, and of course, Mr. Rochester. Till we meet you again, tata, bye bye.